In the suburbs of South Florida, where manicured lawns meet ancient waterways, something prehistoric lurks just beneath the surface, something that has survived since the age of dinosaurs, something that sees us not as neighbors, but as prey. This is the story of a single evening in May 2006, when a young woman's simple jog became a nightmare that would shock a nation. Her name was Yovy Suarez Jimenez, and what happened to her would change how Florida sees its waterways forever. Picture this: you're 28 years old. You have dreams, plans, people who love you. You step outside for a simple jog on a warm Tuesday evening. The sun is setting. The air smells like jasmine and possibility. You call your mother to check in, your voice light with the rhythm of your footsteps. "I'm sitting by a bridge,
Yes,
Mom.
I do not
Just
believe
taking
so.
a little rest." Those would be the last words your family would ever hear you speak. Because in Florida's canals, something is always watching. Something with eyes like black mirrors and jaws that can snap a human bone like a twig. Something that has been waiting in those dark waters for 200 million years. And tonight it's hungry. Yovy Suarez Jimenez wasn't supposed to die that Tuesday evening in May 2006. She was supposed to finish her jog, return to her small mobile home in the Sunrise suburb of Fort Lauderdale. Maybe call her family back home, perhaps study for her classes. She was supposed to have a future. Born in a country where opportunity came hard and dreams required sacrifice, Yovy had made the journey that millions make, trading the familiar for the promise of something better. At 28, she carried herself with the quiet determination of someone who had fought for everything she had. Her family knew her as the responsible one, the one who always called to check in, the one who never missed a chance to reassure them that she was safe. The mobile home park where she lived wasn't glamorous, but it was hers. Neat, organized, filled with the small treasures that make a place feel like home. Photos of family gatherings, textbooks stacked on a modest desk, running shoes by the door, evidence of a life lived with purpose and hope. Yovy was a student, hungry for knowledge, determined to build something lasting from the opportunities America offered. Her neighbors remember her as polite, focused, the kind of person who smiled when she passed you on the street, but kept her world small and manageable. She had routines, habits that made her feel secure in a country that could still feel foreign. One of those routines was her evening jogs. She loved the time just before sunset, when the Florida heat began to soften and the light turned golden. The canal that ran near her mobile home park offered a perfect circuit: paved paths, decent lighting, the gentle sound of water that made the suburban setting feel almost peaceful. Her family back home worried, as families do. "Be careful," her mother would say during their regular phone calls. "Stay where there are people, don't go too far." Yovy would laugh, gentle and reassuring. "Mom, I'm fine. This isn't like back home. It's safe here. I stick to the good areas." She had no way of knowing that in Florida the definition of safe could change in an instant. The canal system that wound through Sunrise and the greater Fort Lauderdale area was a testament to human engineering. Miles of concrete-lined waterways designed to manage South Florida's notorious flooding. To residents, these canals were part of the landscape, as common as palm trees and strip malls. Children played near them, joggers used the paths alongside them, fishermen cast their lines into the dark water. But these weren't just drainage ditches. They were highways for something far older and more dangerous than the suburban communities built around them. The American alligator is a miracle of evolution, a perfect killing machine that has remained virtually unchanged for 200 million years. When the dinosaurs ruled the earth, alligators were there. When mammals began their rise to dominance, alligators adapted and survived. When humans arrived in Florida and began reshaping the landscape, alligators learned to live alongside them. But alongside is a generous term. An adult alligator can grow to over 12 feet long and weigh more than 600 pounds. Their jaws can snap shut with a force of 2,125 pounds per square inch, enough to crush a human's skull like an eggshell. They are ambush predators, masters of patience, capable of remaining motionless in murky water for hours, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. In the wild, They typically hunt fish, birds, small mammals. But Florida's rapid development had created an unnatural situation. As suburban communities expanded into former wetlands, as golf courses and shopping centers replaced natural habitat, alligators found themselves living in increasingly close proximity to humans. The canal systems, designed purely for water management, became superhighways for these apex predators. A large alligator could travel miles through the interconnected waterways, moving from remote swampland into the heart of suburban communities without ever leaving the water. By 2006, wildlife officials estimated that Florida was home to more than 1 million alligators. Most lived in remote areas, far from human contact. But a significant number had taken up residence in urban and suburban waterways, drawn by easy hunting and minimal human interference. The Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission tracked alligator-human encounters carefully. Most incidents involved property damage or minor injuries, an alligator in a backyard pool, a close encounter on a golf course. Fatal attacks were rare, typically averaging 1 per year statewide. But something was changing in the spring of 2006. In the months leading up to that fatal Tuesday in May, there had been signs. Reports of unusually aggressive alligator behavior across South Florida. Sightings of large gators in areas where they'd rarely been seen before. Wildlife officials received more calls about nuisance alligators, gators that had lost their natural fear of humans and were becoming bold in populated areas. The spring mating season had made things worse. Male alligators become more territorial and aggressive during breeding season, more likely to venture into unfamiliar territory, more likely to see any intrusion as a threat requiring violent response. Local news stations had run the usual warnings: stay away from waterways at dusk and dawn, never feed alligators, keep pets on leashes near water. But these warnings had become background noise to most residents. Fatal alligator attacks were so rare that they seemed like urban legends, stories that happened to other people in other places. The canal near Yovy's mobile home park had been home to alligators for years. Residents occasionally spotted them sunning themselves on the banks or gliding silently through the water. A few people had even called wildlife officials to report a particularly large gator that seemed to have claimed the area as its territory. That gator was described as massive, easily 9 feet long, possibly larger. Distinctive because it appeared to be missing an eye, likely the result of a territorial battle with another male. The missing eye gave it an off-kilter appearance that residents found unsettling. But nuisance calls were common, and unless an alligator posed an immediate threat to human safety, wildlife officials typically left them alone. Several joggers had reported seeing the one-eyed alligator during evening runs. It seemed to prefer the deeper section of the canal near the bridge where Yovy would make her final phone call. Some runners had altered their routes to avoid that particular stretch of water. Yovy wasn't one of them. Tuesday, May 9, 2006 dawned hot and humid, typical for late spring in South Florida. By evening, the temperature had dropped to a comfortable 78 degrees, with a light breeze carrying the scent of blooming jasmine and the distant salt air from the Atlantic. Yovy finished her dinner around 6:30 p.m., changed into her running clothes, comfortable shorts, a light t-shirt, well-worn athletic shoes that had carried her through hundreds of miles of Florida pavement. She grabbed her phone, kissed the small crucifix she wore around her neck, and stepped into the golden evening light. The mobile home park was quiet, residents settling in for the evening. Children's voices carried from backyard pools. The smell of barbecue drifted from a neighbor's patio. It was the kind of peaceful suburban evening that made people feel safe, insulated from the dangers of the larger world. Yovy began her usual route, following the paved path that ran alongside the canal. Her pace was steady, comfortable. This wasn't about speed or competition, just the simple pleasure of movement and the meditative rhythm of footsteps on pavement. She passed other evening exercisers, a couple walking their dog, an older man on a bicycle, a woman pushing a stroller. Everyone nodded politely, sharing the unspoken camaraderie of people taking care of themselves, taking advantage of Florida's eternal summer. At approximately 7:15 p.m., Yovy's phone rang, her mother calling for their regular check-in. Yovy had trained her family to expect these calls, a way of staying connected across the miles, a small reassurance that she was safe and thinking of them. "Hi, Mom." Yovy's voice was slightly breathless but happy. "I'm out for my run. How are you feeling, Mija? Not too tired?" "I feel good, really good. I'm just taking a little rest right now." "Where are you?" "Sitting by a bridge. It's beautiful tonight. The water looks so peaceful." That bridge spanned one of the wider sections of the canal, a popular spot for fishing and an ideal rest stop for joggers. Concrete benches offered a place to sit and catch your breath. The water below was deeper here, darker, fed by underground springs that kept it cool even in summer heat. Yovy chatted with her mother for several more minutes, talking about her classes, her plans for the weekend, small family news. Her voice was relaxed, content. There was no hint of fear, no suggestion that anything was wrong. "I should probably head back now," she finally said. "It's getting darker. Be careful, Mija. I love you." "I love you too, Mom. I'll call you tomorrow." The call ended at 7:32 p.m. Yovy never made it home. What happened in the next few minutes would be reconstructed later from physical evidence and the expertise of wildlife officials who had seen too many alligator attacks. The story they pieced together was a nightmare of split-second violence and prehistoric fury. Yovy had stood up from the bench, probably stretched, maybe checked her phone one last time. The path home would take her along the canal's edge for another quarter-mile before turning inland toward the mobile home park. She never got the chance to take that turn. The alligator had been waiting in the deeper water near the bridge, possibly for hours. At 9 feet 6 inches long and weighing close to 400 pounds, it was a mature male, battle-scarred and aggressive. The missing eye that made it distinctive to local residents was likely the result of territorial combat with another male, a sign that this was an animal accustomed to violence. Alligators are ambush predators. They don't chase their prey like lions or wolves. Instead, they wait with infinite patience until their target comes within striking distance, then explode into motion with devastating speed and power. The attack would have been over in seconds, as Yovy walked along the path, perhaps 3 or 4 feet from the water's edge. The alligator launched itself from the canal with terrifying speed. Alligators can accelerate from motionless to 25 miles per hour in an instant, using their powerful tails to propel their massive bodies out of the water and onto land. The first bite caught Yovy on the leg, massive jaws clamping down with bone-crushing force. The pain would have been immediate and overwhelming, but there would have been no time to process what was happening. No time to scream. No time to run. Alligators kill using a technique called a death roll, clamping onto their prey and spinning violently to disorient and dismember. The force generated by a 400-pound alligator in a death roll can tear a human limb from its socket in seconds. Dr. Joshua Perper, the Broward County medical examiner who would later conduct Yovy's autopsy, determined that she suffered severe bites to her leg and back. But it was the violent spinning motion that proved fatal. Both of her arms were torn completely from her body during the attack. The medical examiner's report would later state that Yovy died very quickly from shock and massive blood loss. Her suffering, mercifully, was brief. But in those final moments, as the prehistoric monster dragged her toward the dark water, she would have experienced terror beyond imagination. The alligator pulled her body into the canal, disappearing beneath the surface with its prize. When Yovy failed to return home by 9 p.m., her roommate began to worry. Yovy was punctual, responsible, not the type to extend a jog without calling. By 10 p.m., concern had turned to panic. The mobile home park's small community rallied quickly. Neighbors grabbed flashlights and began searching the usual jogging routes. They called her name, checked the parking lots of nearby shopping centers, contacted local hospitals. At 11:47 p.m., Yovy's family reported her missing to the Broward County Sheriff's Office. At 6:45 a.m. on Wednesday morning, a construction crew arrived at a job site about a quarter-mile downstream from where Yovy had made her final phone call. Jose Martinez, a 34-year-old concrete specialist, was the first to see it. "There's something floating in the water," he called to his supervisor. "Looks like, I think it might be a person." It was clearly a human body. But something was horribly wrong. Where the arms should have been, there were only ragged stumps. The water around the body was tinged with red, and the unmistakable smell of death hung heavy in the humid morning air. Within hours, Yovy Suarez Jimenez was positively identified through dental records. The search for a missing person had become a hunt for a killer, a prehistoric killer that could still be lurking in the dark water just feet away from the crime scene. Dr. Joshua Perper's autopsy revealed the full horror of what had happened. Both of Yovy's arms had been completely severed from her body. The separation was clean, consistent with the incredible bite force of a large alligator, over 2,000 pounds per square inch. She died very quickly from shock and blood loss, he announced at a press conference. She would have lost consciousness within seconds of the initial attack. It's unlikely she would have been aware of what was happening for more than a few moments. The medical evidence painted a clear picture. Yovy had been attacked while on land, probably within a few feet of the canal's edge. The alligator had launched itself from the water, grabbed her leg, and dragged her into its domain. Led by veteran trapper Jake Morrison, a team of experts descended on the canal system with one goal: find and capture the alligator responsible for Yovy's death. "We're dealing with an apex predator that's lost its natural fear of humans," Morrison explained. "This animal has crossed a line. It needs to be removed from the population immediately." For 3 days, the lines came up empty. Then, on Saturday morning, May 13th, everything changed. The call came in at 5:47 a.m. One of the baited lines had been triggered during the night. In the murky pre-dawn water, they could see the outline of an enormous alligator, easily 9 feet long, thrashing against the heavy cable that held it. As they hauled the massive reptile onto the bank, Morrison noticed the alligator's right eye was clouded and sightless, matching witness descriptions of the distinctive gator that residents had been seeing in the area for months. Dr. Alan Richardson conducted the necropsy on the captured alligator. What he found in the animal's stomach would provide the definitive proof that this was Yovy's killer, and would give investigators nightmares for years to come. Both of Yovy Suarez Jimenez's arms were recovered intact from the alligator's digestive tract. The discovery was both horrifying and scientifically valuable. It confirmed beyond any doubt that this was the animal responsible for Yovy's death. What made Yovy's death particularly shocking was its timing. Her attack was one of 3 fatal alligator encounters that occurred in Florida within a single 7-day period, an unprecedented cluster that sent wildlife officials scrambling for explanations. 3 women, all in their 20s, all killed by alligators within 1 week. It was a statistical anomaly that defied explanation and terrorized a state where alligator attacks typically occurred once or twice per year. The 3 deaths in 1 week triggered a panic that rippled across Florida and beyond. Waterfront property values plummeted. Tourism officials fielded thousands of calls from visitors canceling vacations. Governor Jeb Bush convened an emergency task force to address the crisis. The mobile home park where Yovy had lived became a symbol of misplaced suburban confidence. Residents who had jogged along the canal for years suddenly realized they had been sharing their neighborhood with apex predators. For Yovy's family, the media circus and policy debates were distant concerns compared to the crushing reality of their loss. "She was so careful," Carmen told reporters through tears. "She always stayed on the path, always called me. She did everything right. How could this happen to someone who did everything right?" The family eventually hired an attorney and pursued a wrongful death lawsuit against the county, arguing that inadequate warning signs and poor wildlife management had contributed to Yovy's death. Today, more than 15 years after her death, Yovy Suarez Jimenez is remembered not just as a victim, but as a catalyst for change that has undoubtedly prevented other tragedies. The warning signs posted at Florida waterways, the enhanced trapper programs, the public education campaigns that teach residents to respect alligator habitat, all trace back to that terrible week in May 2006. Her family established a memorial scholarship in her name, helping other young immigrants pursue the education that Yovy valued so highly. The story of Yovy Suarez Jimenez is ultimately a story about boundaries, the thin, often invisible lines between civilization and wilderness, between safety and danger, between the modern world and ancient forces that shaped our planet long before humans existed. In suburban South Florida, those boundaries blur in ways that can be deadly. Most of the time, this coexistence works. But occasionally, tragically, the boundaries collapse. The canal where Yovy died still flows through Sunrise, Florida. New residents have moved into the mobile home park where she lived. Other young people jog the paths she once traveled, though they stay farther from the water's edge and rarely venture out alone after dark. On quiet evenings when the light turns golden and the air carries the scent of jasmine, it's easy to imagine that nothing has changed. But residents know better now. They've learned that beneath the surface of every Florida waterway, something ancient is watching. Something that has been waiting with infinite patience for 200 million years. Something that, given the right moment, will always choose to strike.